Light leaned against stillness and did not fall. A shimmer crossed the frame, soft as breath. For a moment, the tail of 3i Atlas looked alive again. A sensor blinked once. Timestamp March 6, 2025. The Comet Interceptor, an instrument of the European Space Agency, turned its narrow eyes toward the returning ion jets. The nucleus remained motionless, but the light above it shifted. The field camera registered arcs of blue, faint and curved inward. Charged dust streamed away and then slowed, as if gravity had reversed. In one frame, motion pointed both directions. In the next, it became a pulse, not a path. Between nucleus and plasma sheath, distance lost meaning. Particles hovered in suspended return. The jet seemed to leave and arrive in the same second. It was a dance without movement, a wind without travel. A note in the archive marked the time and the frame. Telemetry from Probe Unit B repeated the signature ions at 700 meters per second, decaying toward zero. Magnetic tension climbed, then softened, then vanished. Field density folded around the body like silk drawn through water. The console hummed and the room grew still. A faint fan traced a circle of air. Hands rested on the edge of a desk 300 million kilometers away. The numbers aligned in silence. From orbit, Atlas looked unchanged. A speck of ice and dust, steady in sunlight. But its brightness trembled in the lens, as if light itself were remembering motion. Somewhere between the frozen surface and the slow wave of ions, a quiet dialogue continued push and pull, charge and rest, the smallest negotiation in space. No flare, no explosion, only patience. The comet did not move, yet the light kept walking homes. The instruments began to count what the eye could not. Charged dust rose and returned, forming an invisible braid between field lines. Voltage climbed in the sheath, then drifted down again. No thrust, no loss, only exchange. Inside the magnetic envelope, ions met their reflection. The electric field folded upon itself, sending blue particles back toward the nucleus at a fraction of their launch speed. Energy seemed to reverse direction without reason. Telemetry confirmed the pattern. Electrons streamed outward at 700 meters per second, then slowed to nothing within 100 kilometers. Every pulse carried both escape and recall, like a breath taken and released at once. Motors in the probe whispered through the cabin hull. The data stream scrolled in clean lines. Pressure sensors reported equilibrium where imbalance should have lived. It was as though motion had learned stillness. The interceptor's spectrometer registered faint signatures of sodium, carbon monoxide, and silicate ions. Each molecule drifted through charge and quiet. There was no clear boundary between dust and plasma now. Every atom obeyed two forces in opposite directions, and both were calm. For a heartbeat, the field flickered. The room felt alive for a breath. Motion pressed against the frame and sprang back. Light climbed and settled again. Then the hum returned to its normal tone. Voltage held steady. The comet resumed its long silence. Every reading, perfect. Every rhythm, slow. A recorder stamped the run with a quiet code. Archive log 429, March 6, 2025. A note beside it read, jet direction inverted. No anomaly detected. Somewhere between distance and gravity, a rule bent, but did not break. A field once known for pushing away now gathered what it had expelled. The team in Darmstadt paused. No one spoke. Hands hovered above the controls, as if sound might disturb the pattern. The graph on screen showed no drift, only balance flat, precise, unreal. Light on the monitor washed the wall in pale blue. The cursor blinked like a pulse waiting to finish its sentence. Every circuit agreed on calm. The comet did not flare, did not shed mass, did not announce itself to the sky. And yet, the instruments kept listening, for silence that behaved like motion. A pencil rested on an open page. The hum of the console filled the pause. Someone leaned closer to the monitor and waited for the graph to move. It did not. The comet stayed still. Only the light seemed alive. We had built our instruments to chase force, not patience. Every equation we trusted assumed that movement meant energy, that stillness meant rest. But here, in the silent orbit of 3I Atlas, the truth reversed. Energy lived in restraint. The ions moved, but their origin did not. It reminded someone in the room of dust rising from a warm road. Heat shimmered upward, and yet the air itself did not go anywhere. The same illusion, scaled to cosmic size. Data scrolled past in quiet discipline. No alarms, no losses, no errors. Each reading was a confirmation of calm. In the slow rhythm of return and release, the comet seemed to be teaching us balance. We waited with it. The air seemed to listen. Breath slowed and steadied. Far from the instruments, Earth turned through another ordinary dawn. The blue of morning there echoed the faint blue of ions here. Different worlds, same light. Leonardo would have drawn the spiral with care. Sagan would have let the silence speak first. Kubrick would have held the shot a little longer. All would have recognized the elegance and restraint. No one spoke for a long time. It was as though the data itself had entered a human rhythm. A rise, a pause, a return. Not mechanical, but mindful. Every heartbeat on the station matched the pulse on the screen. Outside, the comet's tail glowed faintly against black. Every strand of ionized dust traced the idea of patience. The field around it resembled breath made visible. What we called jets were more like thoughts leaving and returning. A small flare rippled through the plasma. For a heartbeat, the field flickered. The room felt alive for a breath. Light climbed and settled again. The pulse faded as gently as it came. No one marked it in the log. The data would remember on its own. We have chased comets for a century. We measured speed, temperature, decay, but we had never recorded stillness that moved. Now it lived in every pixel of this light. In the quiet, it was easy to forget how far we were from home. Distance lost its edge. The glow outside the viewport looked almost like morning through thin fog. For a moment, the void resembled a familiar room. Someone took a sip of coffee gone cold. The cursor blinked. The day continued. 3I Atlas stayed where it was, perfect in its refusal to move. The interceptor kept watch, writing silence into data and data into memory. The lesson was not about discovery, it was about attention. To see something that does not move and still call it alive. The data said motion. The image said rest. Both were true, and neither could explain the other. Light moved, but the source stayed. Particles left, but gravity never noticed. Every law remained correct, and yet something disobeyed politely. The interceptor's readings showed no thrust, no wind, no external field. And still, the tail bent inward. It was a reversal that made sense only in silence. If movement can happen without travel, then stillness is not the opposite of energy, it is its form. If the comet breathes without moving, then the void itself may have rhythm. Two truths stood face to face. The universe did not argue. It let both exist. A quiet oath formed between knowing and wonder. The day and the night kept a patient border. Between the comet and the sun, a slow exchange continued. Each side waited for the other to begin again. Truth arrived without sound. It came as alignment field to field, rhythm to rhythm. The data did not shout its discovery, it simply held steady. ESA's instruments confirmed the behavior again at 1530 UTC. Ion density near the nucleus had risen by 8%. Jets that should have escaped folded inward instead. The same pattern appeared across 3 sensors, 3 different angles, 1 identical calm. No mechanical error remained. No algorithmic drift. The field itself was teaching a new kind of motion, not outward, but circular, patient, contained. The interceptor watched light move through silence. Each frame became slower, each reading more deliberate. We began to sense intention in the stillness, though it was only physics repeating its own rule. A catalog entry traced the source of the data. Mission log 430, validated. Magnetometer reading 40 nanoteslas. Ion temperature minus 180 degrees. Drift velocity near zero. A perfect symmetry between charge and calm. Yet the meaning reached further than measure. Every balanced force carries memory. Each return implies a beginning. We understood that the comet was not sending matter away, it was keeping contact with the field around it. The long curve of its ion trail became a diagram of patience. Every blue thread a line of connection, each reversal a small act of return. The data formed a pattern that resembled breath. What seemed mechanical was suddenly human. We saw our own reflection in the way it paused. How we move, stop, listen, and move again. The sky did not need to teach us that, but it did. Balance appeared as a kind of return. Meaning arrived as a slower echo of fact. We kept company with order, and order kept its distance with grace. For a moment, even the interceptor's shadow seemed to hover in awareness. The craft, the comet, the instruments, all turned from seeking to remembering. It was not a discovery, but a realization that stillness can contain all directions, and silence can explain what equations could not. The universe was not arguing, it was showing a rule. The law endured, our stance became softer. The field kept holding, our grip let go. The axis remained, the spin in us slowed. The proof was enough and not more. We let the explanation end on time. Numbers loosened their grip. Data softened into hue. The frame glowed as though remembering its own exposure. Each ion that had been counted now drifted back into silence. The field no longer carried motion, only memory of motion. Light traced its last path and stopped needing direction. Between comet and instrument, the line dissolved. What had been distance became perception. What had been measure became color. Stillness did not end the event, it completed it. The jets faded, not in failure, but in grace. Each arc folded into the same slow calm. Brightness lingered around the nucleus like a breath that would not leave. Every remaining particle shimmered once, then rested. The interceptor continued to watch, but the watching itself grew quiet. No telemetry, no feed, just the slow pulse of presence. The comet seemed to hold the light in its hand. Silence filled the screen until silence was all that remained. And for a moment, it felt like understanding had become vision. Not a thought, not a measure, only awareness shaped by light. The light held its breath. The comet no longer changed, and yet everything around it seemed new. Ion trails had vanished, but their pattern remained in the empty field. The interceptor floated inside its own silence. Power steady, course unaltered, each panel catching a measured fraction of sunlight. Nothing moved, and nothing was lost. On the surface below, the dust had settled into soft geometry. Faint rings marked where the jets once began. The shadow of the craft stretched, then faded into brightness. The room on Earth was quiet. Screens glowed with pale residual blue. A hand brushed a sleeve. A chair rolled back with a quiet scrape. No one hurried to speak. Every action waited for permission from calm. The data log ended with no conclusion. The final entry read only stable. It was enough. Proof did not need a flourish. Meaning had already arrived. A notebook closed with care. Coffee cooled beside the keyboard. A faint hum carried through the consoles. The graph line, flat and unbroken, looked less like measurement and more like rest. Outside the window, dusk gathered. Light along the horizon turned from gold to gray. The same patience that lived in the comet now lingered in the air of the room. Stillness had not ended motion. It had folded it into awareness. Every signal we had sent returned as quiet understanding. The comet stayed. The watcher stayed. Between them, nothing passed, and yet, connection held. The day continued without sound. The stars waited for their turn. Silence became the closing statement. And balance remained.